you were just mentioning about graciously handling, like if you get pricked by a thorn or something like that. But then you were also saying how when Muhammad was here, he pushed back and had war against people who were attacking him. So how is that same, like, how does that work? It seems to conflict a little bit.
Okay, very good. So I guess to rephrase the question to make sure that I'm understanding it. Okay, we have the concept of sort of being gracious and having patience when it comes to going through adversity. And then you have the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and maybe even other prophets of the past that have gone to war and basically fought their enemies. So there are two kinds of difficulties that you go through. There's a difficulty that comes from God. It's a difficulty that comes your way. You fall down, you get injured, someone dies, something happens, and it's not necessarily the result of anyone's crime. In that case, there's nothing you can do besides being patient and going through with it with grace. But then there's another kind of there's another kind of evil that happens, and that's evil that comes as a result of the actions of people, like the deliberate actions of people. Now comes justice into the picture, right? So, then there has to be law and order, there has to be consequences, otherwise then, things are going to go crazy, right? So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did he respond to aggression? And the answer is yes. Because if he doesn't respond to aggression, there's going to be a genocide. People are going to die. A greater evil will happen. So is there a concept of justice in Islam where people are held accountable by an authority for what they've done? Where you're going to have examples of just war? Yeah. Right? You find it in the Old Testament. You find it with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as well. So I would say those are two different kinds of bad things. Like, the Sheikh mentioned that we don't really believe in like pure evil, right? There's always a wisdom as to why God willed for these things to happen. But I would say differentiating those two kinds of evils gives you the answer. So in summary, when it comes to bad things that happen to us, that's purely because of divine command and God's will. We're graciously patient through those things because there's no one to hold accountable for that, right? It's just a test from God. And the second kind of bad thing that happens to us is when it comes as a result of the works of people. And if we have authority and there's law, then they can be brought to justice. So I would say differentiating between those kinds of evils or bad things, that should kind of solve the issue. Does that help? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. So I think one of the things is that, we as Muslims and our Christian brothers and sisters also believe that Jesus Christ, he's coming back. We all believe in the second coming, right? And so in Islam, we don't believe Jesus Christ was crucified or killed or died. We believe that God saved him out of his love and raised him alive. And he didn't die, thus he's coming back. Thus his second coming. And so in other words, that means that Jesus Christ's mission was not finished. Right? Jesus Christ, when he was on this earth, he didn't die yet, right? And so he's coming back. His full mission is not what happened during those years on this earth. And so I think it will be logically incorrect for someone to, quote, turn the other cheek and say that is a universal teaching. Because as we know in biblical scriptures, which is also in Islamic scriptures, that when Jesus Christ does come back, he's going to fight wars. He's going to kill the Antichrist. There will be bloodshed. He will shed blood to protect the believers. Right? So we have the exact same thing as the Prophet Muhammad that Jesus Christ will do. And as the Sheikh explained, it's a necessary thing to do because it's a lesser evil. What's the alternative? You have invaders coming. Are we going to just sit there and get killed? Or are we going to protect our babies and children and our women and stand up for our right to exist and live? Right? That's a lesser evil.
Yeah, and just to add one more thing, there's one prophetic narration where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he tells us that among the most evil people in the sight of God, one of them, the Prophet Muhammad, he says, someone who kills someone who is not fighting him or trying to kill him. So for us, the second kind of evil is when it comes from the actions of people. There's one thing when it comes to responding to aggression. There's one thing when it comes to establishing justice. But then the whole concept of killing people, right, for no reason in Islam is one of the greatest crimes in the sight of Allah. So I think that's really important to mention as well, because it's not like if someone does something to you, then you just go fight them. Like, no, right? The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he tells us that people who do this are among the most evil people in the sight of God, right? Yeah.
It's such a big topic, so I just want to add another one. The sanctity of life is so important in Islam that hunting as a sport is prohibited. You can't kill an animal for fun. You can kill an animal, slaughter an animal to eat, but you just can't shoot an animal. That's prohibited in Islam. If that's the case for an animal, then what would you think the rulings would be for human beings?